Welcome, Professor Stuart Dixon. Welcome to Berlin and the Berlin School for Creative Leadership. We're very pleased to have you here. It's a pleasure to have you here, teaching our group on the essentials of economics. At the beginning of your session yesterday, I was rather amused in that you began your session by highlighting the fact that economics is a rather dry subject. Now, do you think that economists are particularly creative people, or can be creative, or are creative, and if so, how?
I mean, I think economics is dry because a lot of people feel that it lacks emotion, and one of the reasons why it lacks emotion is that it's a very logical system of thought.
Right.
You have very clear assumptions. You have a logical process in the way of thinking, and I think at times people feel that that's rather heartless. I think the advantage of economics, and this is where I think it can really help in terms of creativity, is that it allows you to think about things that maybe you wouldn't do so. So often I hear from people saying, yeah, but you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't think like that. Yeah, it's because we're often confined in our thought process by our education, by our cultural background, and the advantage of economics in some sense is it takes you outside of that. It can give you the ability to think about things that normally you perhaps wouldn't think of. You just make some assumptions, and afterwards you just follow the logic through.
Okay. Or perhaps thinking of things in different ways, in new ways.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. So other alternative means, and also it can ask you, there are certain concepts in economics or ideas in economics where you say, well, why wouldn't you do that? If you follow the logic through, this would be the conclusion. And then people say, I wouldn't do that. And then the question goes, well, okay. And you can even start reflecting then on things like corporate social responsibility.
Yes,
so although we don't deal with this directly, as a consequence of our economic actions, we start to see more clearly, in fact, what's going on.
Oh, okay.
So I think it gives you a lot of insight into industry and commerce.
Okay. What drives your passion for economics?
I think my main passion actually is I enjoy the way the system works together, the way it's structured. It gives you, as I say, it gives you tremendous insight. It tells you things that you don't know. One thing I noticed by looking at the faces of the participants over the last couple of days is that I'm telling them things, and they look at me and they're kind of surprised. And they go, "Firms really doing this?" And I say, "Yes, they are." Now, I don't think there are so many subjects where we can analyse the behaviour of organisations where at the end of the day we go, "Wow, I never knew that." That really has given me another perspective. And I think with economics, I'm always getting these new perspectives on things.
Okay.
So I think that for me is the driving force.
That's
It's always it really always raises my curiosity.
Sure, that's interesting. Yes. I was wondering, what would you say would be the three kind of key critical learnings that you would like to see the participants here walk away from your session?
I think from my session, I'd like them to see that you can use a logic and to use a logic in understanding things, and that we should be careful in using too much of our own intuition. Intuition, of course, is important to a manager, but I think you need to think about things carefully. So one thing is try to base your thoughts on a logical process. I think the second thing is that you need to gather information. When you start to understand something, don't just go from the mindset that you have or the information that you have, but try to expand that and look further and research things and try to think about what more information do I need in order to get to the result that I'm looking for. And I think the third thing is really just to think of all the possible alternatives that could be out there. And not to think in terms of how your organisation has always worked, but look at how other firms are doing things, take ideas from them, and think about, okay, now I've got the processes, the logical process, the economic process. I can gain information about industries by reading, and now I'm trying to think, can I now take that idea and transplant it and see if it works in my sector? And this way you get new ideas.
Absolutely. So it's a way of stimulating creativity.
I think so, yeah. That's how I look at it.
Okay. One kind of final question, if I may. Now, I know you're involved in a number of different programs, different executive development programs in many places. And I was wondering, when you look at this program and you compare it to the programs that you were involved in, how do you think that this program, the Berlin School for Creative Leadership MBA program, differs?
Well, I think it differs in a number of ways. I think it's a very international group. I think that's the first thing that strikes you when you walk into the room. That you really have people from all over the world. And so the cultural difference is very stimulating. Also, just the working in these different locations, obviously the environments are very different.
Moving around the world.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. That's unique, would you say?
I would say it's unique. But I think the second thing, actually, which I think is really fascinating, is that the industry in which they're working in is a very special world, and it's very dynamic.
Okay.
And it's an industry, I think, which it needs to have an MBA program like this.
Sure.
Because
when you
one
say,
that really specifically caters for it.
Okay. When you say industry, you mean creative industries?
Creative industries, yes,
okay,
exactly. Yeah.
So it's like you're thinking of it in terms of the sector.
Yeah, I think normally when we look at our MBA students, we're looking at engineers, technical people, usually have a very technical background and tend to sort of rise to a point in their careers where they become managers. These people are in a creative, in the creative sector, designing marketing campaigns or art direction, or working with firms who want to develop these things. And I think this is very different, and I think their needs are different. But at the same time, although they're focused very much on all the medias and technologies that are available to them, they also need to have an understanding about how their clients are thinking and what's going on in the world, in fact, of the, let's say, the regular, ordinary world where most of MBAs are focused.
Exactly.
And for me, it gives me a real insight into seeing a little bit how their world is and how they work in this world and how it functions.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Dixon. It's a great pleasure to have you here. The group has been energized and inspired by the way in which you have made the subject of economics very accessible and relevant and practical to them in their everyday lives. So thank you from the Berlin School. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.